Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's show, we're going to be all over the place, tracking down some of the great holiday train watching that our state has to offer. Now there's a lot to cover in this one, so let's actually start just north of the state line in Folkston, Georgia at their annual Winterwatch event.
Leaving campus, the cold would instantly set in, with temps in the 40s this brisk morning and really never getting that much warmer for the rest of the day. It would be a rainy one too, but that wouldn't stop many from coming out to this year's event, including myself, as the radio would find me pulling off briefly at Hilliard as Amtrak 91 enters the vicinity. Hilliard is just 11 short miles from Folkston and the second to last settlement along US 301 before you enter Georgia at the state line, easily identifiable by the St. Mary's River, which this busy double-tracked A-line crosses just 2 miles south of downtown Folkston. '91 would roll into the distance, running a little bit behind, as I'd ease into Folkston, where a few dozen people would already be. As I said, it would be a cold and rainy day today, but it would be great to put a lot of names to faces and meet up with some old friends. The train traffic wouldn't be half bad as well, as following 91 would be Amtrak 97, the southbound Silver Meteor, coming into town shortly after I'd arrive and set up. Staked out at the platform would be the usuals. Joshua Kintner out of Lakeland answering any questions about his extensive logging of my home area, and Andrew Stevenson, a noted train symbol source for information and his well-known 24-hour Folkston train log that he completes from midnight to midnight, spanning the duration of the event and long into the night. I'd relocate to the west side of the tracks as I-030 would approach next, running as peak season out of Jacksonville from North Bergen, New Jersey, just outside of New York, with plenty of holiday merchandise bound for the Big Apple and its extensive ports along the Hudson River. Just 10 minutes pass, and L795 from Waycross arrives, along with a light drizzle from the north, which we rail fans would combat with our umbrellas as the Moncrief Monster passes by. Fondly noted as one of the easier jobs out of Waycross's huge rice yard by a few CSX employees present for today's festivities. L795 would live up to its name today, with a massive train from Moncrief Yard, as more and more rail fans would arrive, including most of the gang out of Jacksonville, just an hour away with the absence of traffic this lazy Saturday. 20 minutes pass, and with another northbound line on track 1, I'd head up the stairs and onto the depot's porch for some cover, as the rain would come down a bit harder now as M442 from Tampa presents himself, at a pretty good pace along this last stretch of travel between Baldwin and Waycross. Eight minutes and the noontime parade continues as I-137 shows up next, with plenty of intermodal out of Charlotte for Jacksonville, with notable stops at Charleston and Savannah along the daily trip south down the A-line. Inside the museum, the heat would be turned on, along with the lights and a large N-scale module layout, made up mostly from Mr. Tom Imlay's collection, and the host for the layout, as many different trains from many different eras would run by as the centerpiece for the community this afternoon. Many would also attend, as Mr. Danny Harmon would host a meet and greet this year in the depot, allowing lots of kids and adults alike to meet the man who probably sparked some of their interest in the hobby itself. The large depot here in Folkston is still maintained very quaintly as a railroad museum, one that I'd be able to check out on the north side of the train table and conversation, where railroad memorabilia reside, including old artifacts, radios, equipment, maps, and tales from long, long ago. And it's only that much better when a busy double-tracked main line is just feet outside the window. Over on the layout, CSX and Seaboard would soon take over, along with my favorite piece from today, the realistic CSX Intermodal with a kit-bashed geometry car with working red laser shooting out the bottom. This is my first time seeing one of these works, and I'd be heavily interested in an HO version, that is, if intermodal wells in their containers weren't such a black hole for the bank account. The depot would temporarily empty, as everyone would file out one by one, as CSX would be sending by our train of the day, symboled S311 from Jacksonville, loaded tanks from Blunt Island heading up the A-line at noontime. Jacksonville and its Blunt Island has been extremely busy with these types of military moves over the last few weeks, so it would be nice to finally catch one of their loaded moves in daylight, especially when brand new tanks make up the loads, another sight I've actually never seen before. Lunch at Whistling Dixie would be next for me, as more peak season intermodal would enter the scene from the north. Later in the day, I'd bid farewell to the dozens still out in the cold and head back to Jack's, with a stop at Bayard on the way home. A green signal would be late here for a late 107 coming south, so I'd promptly set up for that, as my train of interest would approach from the south. .107 is daily intermodal between Jacksonville and Miami, running a bit late today, which would allow me to see him at 7:46 p.m. this day, led by 2 GE sandwiching an LNG tender and an SD40 in tow, likely for Hialeah and the many industrial and port jobs that branch from FEC's Miami terminals. The next sighting south from Bayard is Magnolia on the north side of St. Augustine at milepost 30 at the north end. Meeting the 107 there would be the northbound Christmas train, profiled BIZN, the BIZ or Biz for business, and the N for northbound. After a morning departure for Miami, the Christmas train would stop in Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, Fort Pierce, and New Smyrna Beach all along its way north today, with FEC's business train in front and cars filled with toys in tow. At each stop, the crew on board will hand out toys to the community and allow many common folk to meet engineers and employees of the railroad. It's one of the coolest events that goes on in the state, and so although the rain would continue to fall along with the cold temps this night, I'd stick it out here for the Jacksonville-bound train coming through with the rain at 8:30 p.m. now.
Welcome back, fellas. I just took my last final for this semester. So, I got some word that we have the office car train coming south to Jacksonville from Waycross today. So, saddled up, hit I-95. We are on Kings Road now, heading towards the A-line. I'm thinking of a shot maybe at Edgewood or Sutel, but we'll have P001 coming south here towards Jacksonville. Still don't know the reason, but I'll take what I can get.
Meeting up with my buddy Justin at Edgewood, we'd soon begin to hear P001 on the radio, approaching from Waycross just before 11 a.m. this morning, after leaving Rice Yard about an hour before. To this day, I'm still not entirely sure why CSX decided to move the OCS from Waycross to West Jacks, but it wouldn't matter to the handful of us out for it, as the sharpest train on the system arrives at 11:15 this cloudy morn.
Vehicle to 108 clear, north end down track. Track 2, CSXT1, 7.
As I said, this train is destined for West Jacks, which is much quicker to get to via car than train from Edgewood, so that's where I'd promptly relocate to along the SP line, as dispatch would cross the train onto the yard lead here in order for the train to get into the yard and clear up for a couple of intermodals departing nearby yards. The weather would be quite cold this day, much to my delight, yet cloudy as always when this train comes to town. I've seen this OCS train 3 times this year, and every single occasion has been a cloudy afternoon. Perhaps a coincidence, perhaps not, considering what this train's tour can sometimes mean for redundant subdivisions. I would give you guys a little music preview, but with YouTube's egregious copyright laws, I will digress. Now, we're heading on I-10 westbound out of Jacks. Just got that P001 coming into West Jacks. And we're heading out of Jacksonville now towards Baldwin and US 301 out there because we have yet another CSX passenger train coming south out of Waycross. It's a W001 and it's a track geometry train coming south. So he's around Callahan now and we're about 8 miles out of Baldwin. So we should be able to see him, but he's heading down to Wildwood today. So if anything, might get him on the return journey. We'll see if we're out that long though. But hopefully right now the shot is at Baldwin and see a couple of the boys and hopefully get our second CSX passenger train of the day. Reaching Baldwin just afternoon, I'd set up at the Diamond as red signals would greet me and that W001, who'd come to a stop just north of the Main Street crossing here, would also arrive. It would turn out that Baldwin wasn't quite ready for the train yet, as they'd prepare a yard track for the train to stop in as they'd unload trash, swap crews, and feed the onboard personnel with a solid lunch from a nearby barbecue joint. This W001 is a track inspection train that would come south out of Waycross just minutes behind the OCS this morning, but would take the Callahan sub south towards Baldwin instead of Jacksonville. Since this train would be destined for Tampa, they run it down the S line today, with a lunch break in Baldwin, one that the yardmaster would now be ready for, as a medium approach illuminates the signal at the Diamond now for W001's entrance into the yard. Like I said earlier, this W001 is a track geometry inspection train, made up of 3 passenger cars, the first of the set being CSX's Florence car, which is the power generator car that also houses computers and equipment related to the inspection process. Second up is the Detroit. It's a sleeper car that also hosts a small kitchen for onboard meals, with CSX's TGC2 bringing up the rear. TGC stands for Track Geometry Car, this one fitted with a large window on the back end for crews to watch out of as the traveled tracks disappear into the distance while the lasers scan and record information of the rails as they pass by underneath. I'd get going to the south side of the yard shortly after W001 would enter, as coming up from the south would be daily local train L752, who'd pull up to the south end of the yard along with me before getting a signal to enter the yard and begin his afternoon of switching alongside a couple of yard jobs. He's crossing over and around that tied down M442, who wouldn't get a crew until later tonight, for now tying up track 1. Waiting for this L752 in the yard would be southbound train M453, who'd promptly get a job briefing to depart following the local train's entrance, so I'd head south to Maxville, as that's where I wanted to attempt to catch the W001 following their crew change and lunch break. 453 would be first, however, led by 2 lovely AC44s in 2 different decades of CSX paint. this Baldwin crew would have some work to do with these AC-44s, as a stop at Wildwood would be in the playbook today, before ending their day at Lakeland and a crew change with Miami personnel. 10 minutes pass and lunch is wrapping up for W001, as they'd get signals down the S-line just moments later, taking and inspecting that track 2 down to Stark as M442 continues to sit and tie up track 1 at the yard's south end. Between W001's passing and the approach of more cold rain, I'd head back to Jacksonville, as just 2 days later, I'd make the drive to Tampa and home. Just 2 weeks prior, I'd be home for Thanksgiving break, which would obviously include a Tuesday night drive to the Brooksville sub to catch this week's L781, and a long one at that. Just the day prior, CSX 1851 would come to Tampa on train M441, and with yard power needed, CSX would strip the road train of its power and send it out on this L781, one that I'd be very grateful to be able to see, as this is just the second heritage unit of any kind that has been up this subdivision. This 1851 is CSX's 19th heritage unit, painted neatly for the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railway, a company that would operate between 1851 and 1957 through the heart of the southeastern region of the US and still a major part of CSX's mainline system up there. Its burgundy and gold scheme is one of the cleanest in my opinion, and one that I would not expect to see in Lutz of all places, but I guess that's just the magic of this subdivision. Earlier in the semester, I'd find myself on the other side of the crossing at US 41 in Lutz, as another 781 would pop up, much to my delight.
What would be a trip home without a little catch of L781? I was actually on my way back to Jacksonville this Sunday morning, but we have stopped here on the side of US 41 because we have word that 781's running a little bit earlier today and picking up some lumber, or lumber empties I should say, from Tibbet. So here we wait as 781 comes back for the first time in about 3 months since moving.
Back to present day and Christmas time, I'd once again planned an outing for what I hope to be an annual tradition now to the Florida Railroad Museum for their North Pole Express event. I'd arrive on Tuesday morning as the museum's yard in Willow would sit quietly, save for Dakota and a small train of track equipment that he'd be fixing to take south down to Parrish this day. On the main line here would be the Christmas train, covered festively in lights and decked out on the inside with garlands, ornaments, and refreshments. Adjacent to that would be the 1835 and 100, a freshly repainted GE 44-tonner that we'd be using this day for our day out. The Christmas train runs Wednesday through Sunday nights, so this Tuesday off would be the scheduled day for Dakota to work on his main line, accompanied by me.
Hey guys, we're now on the General Electric 44-ton locomotive. This is going to be our power for today's track inspection. Do a quick walkthrough here as we get this thing started. The 44-tonners weren't usually built with these Caterpillar inline 6-cylinder engines. This was an overhaul for the US Navy, so some very niche items on this one. In short, this loco has 2 engines, or prime movers so to speak, but they're basically like semi-truck engines, so they're very easy to work with. It also gives you some variability in how to operate because you don't necessarily have to run with both, and since we're towing essentially nothing, as in 3 track carts, we're only going to run with the 1 engine today because that burns half the fuel. Twin Caterpillar 3066Bs are your engine models in here. Looks good on oil as well. We can check this as well once it's running, but the stopped mark looks pretty good. So we're all good to go on the number 1. So we'll head back in here and get her started. So oil pressure settles out about 50 psi, which is good. It's about where you want it. It'll vary as you change your RPMs through operation, but since we only got one compressor going, each engine has its own compressor, so it's we're only running one engine. It'll take a minute to build air, but once we're all built up, we'll check everything and then we'll be on our way. So pretty easy to run these.
Just after 11 a.m. on this beautifully cool December morning, we depart Willow southbound with 3 maintenance of way carts in tow, all with specific jobs that we'll be taking care of today. Southbound from Willow, you'll soon leave the engine shops and yard behind, now fondly known as the North Pole to employees, volunteers, and riders alike. Looking north is the runaround, where most of the year, the power for the train will run around the consist before backing the train into Willow in order for the engine to now be facing south for the return trip to Parrish. Also at the runaround is the spur track to FPL's Willow Power Plant, where the museum stores some assorted equipment along the miles of track leading to the plant. From the main line from Willow to Parrish, one can see the smokestacks of the plant way off in the distance as we rumble south, as many seaboard freight and passenger trains once did many, many years ago.
So part of being in charge of this track is being in charge of everything, including the vegetation you see on the side. We put in about 600 ties this year across our 6 miles or so. And in that time, vegetation easily gets away from you. And you'll see some of these trees up here on the side. I haven't had a chance to get picked up yet. But that's just a glimpse of what the entirety of this track looks like at some points when I'm out here with a pole saw and a crane to keep these trees from encroaching on the right-of-way. Got this rail right here. See these little bits of pitting, this little raise in the running head. I believe, not positive, but I'm pretty sure that this is likely a horizontal split head that's developing. So we stopped real quick to take a look at it. It's okay to continue in use, no speed restrictions or anything of the sort, but we're at the point, seeing the signs we do, that every 90 days we have to take a look at this, and we've just come up on that 90 days. So we just stop real quick, take a look at it. I put new joint bars on this probably 6 months ago or better, but it's been holding up pretty good, so.
At milepost SW857 is Nichols and the Members Memorial. Gently situated in the midst of calm Floridian vegetation, Nichols honors those who have served the museum who are now in a better place. The spot always reckons a horn blast from the passing engineer, one that Dakota would display as our work train continues south. Past Dickey Road, Dakota would have to tighten a few bolts at the track joints and switch out some as well. So on with the machinery and onto the ground with the crew, as maintenance season is in full swing all year long for this guy. It's what keeps the trains running and what keeps them on track, something that riders and volunteers all take for granted when they show up for the fun part of the museum, like tomorrow night.
Now it's time for my favorite thing. Get to replace a joint bar. We're gonna get it clear for the day and call it.
Next day, we're back out for this week's first run of the North Pole Express, as the train has taken south by Dakota to Parrish around 2 p.m., where it'll be ready for tonight's festivities, and where lunch would be for us in the form of Parrish Pizzeria, just a stone throw away from the end of track at US 301. At 5:15, the train is boarded and ready to go, as 1835 does the honors by pulling out of Parrish right on time with a sold-out train bound for Willow, or the North Pole for this season. To Dickey Road we'd go next, as the train would appear right at peak sunset, with a 6 p.m. arrival at Willow occurring just moments later. Cooper and I would stick around to see the southbound deadhead go back to Parrish, setting up back at Dickey Road as 204 leads the festive train back south. This is where I'd end off the day and begin the drive home to Tampa after a couple of eventful days trackside at the museum and a very eventful couple weeks all around the state. Thank you all for watching this one, and I hope you all enjoyed it just as much as I did, filming, editing, and posting it. If I don't see you again before then, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all of you. It's been a great year for the channel, and I can't wait for next year's projects and trips to come around very soon. But until we meet again trackside, happy holidays everyone. This is Christian from Multicolor Films. End of transmission.